Welcome. This is Elizabeth Fulgaro. With me again is Chaplain Lisa Northway, U.S. Army, and she's sharing a bit about her journey through the military and the spiritual aspects of that. Hi, Chaplain Lisa.
Hi, Elizabeth. It's great to be with you.
It's lovely to be with you as well. Can you please share the last time when we finished, you were talking about being at that place where the troops were coming into the Middle East and preparing to be in Iraq, and that you were in facilitating their soul care. Can you talk a little bit about your own soul care and the challenges that might have faced you as a chaplain there?
Well, I was uh, put in a situation. It kind of, I guess, in some ways, it's sort of a spiritual sandwich. Now that I just think about it, we were told, many of us were told coming in, especially as women, come in ministry, getting ready to serve in a male-dominated branch of chaplains, that there would be many. We should expect that there will be male chaplains who absolutely theologically have strong convictions that we do not belong there. And my first chaplain supervisor on that deployment was Independent Baptist. I really didn't know what Independent Baptist meant specifically. I think we're known by how we treat others and how we provide spiritual hospitality. And so I'm only telling you first the first part of that sandwich layer, and that was my supervisor. And as time went on, and he saw that I had been at the last minute been given a chaplain assistant. Now they're called religious affairs specialists. This is a chaplain assistant, a young man who was told he needed to go with me, and we would be a team for the next year. And in that arrangement, when I got there, the lieutenant colonel chaplain saw that I had a chaplain assistant, but he didn't have one. And so he said, well, I'm going to, need him to, I think he really needs to be mine. And we'll just all have to make do. And I said, yes, sir. I did, of course, contact the actual supervisor for that chaplain assistant, told him what was going on. And he said, well, I appreciate you to keep us informed. And if we need to, we'll come out there. But his way of supervising that chaplain assistant and in his philosophy that a woman did not have a place in ministry in that environment was to, I guess, what I saw, how some people describe uh, patriarchy. Even though he was a young man, still coming into his own, he was treated with much more dignity than I was. So much that the active duty, uh, the chaplains that were coming through there, some that were part of the theater sustainment organization, some who those organizations who stay longer. And this one brigade was there 7 months, not just 2 weeks. And they had took me aside and said, "Hey, it's not normal. Like, I know you're a reservist and he's a reservist. You seem like you're really trying to do some good things around here, but we just want to let you know if you have any impact on this, it's not appropriate for a young soldier not to stand up when an officer comes in the room." And this chaplain assistant, and really because of the relationship of the patriarchy that was happening there, and really that chaplain assistant, that young soldier, being encouraged not to give respect to me and really anyone else, would sit with his legs crossed on the desk. And I realized that this was really a spiritual hospitality issue. That this is why we're called today a profession of arms. We're supposed to be professional. You don't need to be a religious person to facilitate that, or you don't have to be a Christian to facilitate that. And I realized, I think they realized too, the wisdom that came alongside me and said, we're gonna be your battle buddies. You're not alone here. We're only here for a few months, but we don't want you to feel alone. And they would come around and they could see the disrespect, the lack of dignity that was shown to me as a woman and as the deputy at that time, the deputy camp chaplain. And after a few months, the that chaplain was time for him to return back stateside. He was a reserve chaplain, and the next two candidates, so the next two lieutenant colonels, I was told eventually they never showed up. It was just a time where many people at that point and during the surge had never their reserve units had never had to deploy, and it was just they were on that cusp of, well, should I just retire? And so finally I get a phone call from another camp, and I was asked, Chaplain Northway, since you're already doing the job and it appears that there's no replacement coming, can you just be the camp chaplain? And I had just become a captain at that point. And I'm like, well, it just didn't seem like you could say no. It's like, well, I'm doing the job, and here we go. But it was an amazing time in that place of being with soldiers who weren't always afraid about going to Iraq, weren't always afraid of crossing the border. But what I discovered in that time, working with all the different compos of regular Army, Reserve, National Guard, and even our allied troops very often was sometimes their worst fear was the reason that they might not come home was because of their leaders. Their leaders who felt that they did not care for them, who had showed them disregard, a lack of dignity or respect. And I thought that, to me, was so profound, that they would come looking for a chaplain. Maybe they were new to the unit, or the chaplain was new to the unit. They couldn't find their chaplain. They knew where the camp chapel was. And they would find this brand new captain or a lieutenant at the beginning and ask, can I talk to you, ma'am? Can I talk to you, chaplain?
How do you help them with that particular concern?
I did discover that I needed to learn a whole new language, because certainly I've been seminary trained, certainly I've been in ministry for years, and I had a sense of what was right and wrong, and I knew a little bit about the Army regulation. In addition, when you only have lieutenant rank or captain rank, and you come to a leader, maybe who's somebody who's been doing this for decades, and they think they've been doing a pretty good job, and they don't have an understanding of how their behavior, or maybe another leader's behavior, has impacted their soldiers so much that they're literally scared to death to cross that border, or they have something that they unfinished business, spiritual, something from their family, something that wasn't quite taken care of before they got on that plane to come into a combat environment. I found quickly I needed to learn the right words, the right language, so I could give a recommendation, because chaplains are not decision makers per se in our military world, but we are recommenders. We regularly give recommendations to leaders on what they might do, how they can best care for that soldier, given the resources that we would have there, any given place where we're at, versus the resources not likely to be available at the next place that they were going.
So are you saying that you would go to the leaders?
Yes, I would go.
Oh my.
I would go. Yes. I've learned maybe to do things a little bit differently. Sometimes to see if I can get a leader to come to a chapel as the time went on. But, when you think about the thousands and thousands of troops that were coming through a camp, I would go try to find that location and meet them face to face. I definitely have a value for face to face conversations, and for them to hear my heart for their soldier, what I believe would be right. And certainly, some of those first conversations were very gristly. I can remember a very seasoned sergeant major standing over me and saying, "Who are you? Why are you telling me what to do with my soldier?" And then hearing me out a little bit and say, "Oh, chaplain, that's okay. We're gonna take him with us. We're not leaving him here. We're not gonna send him home. He signed up for this, so When we get over there, we'll just take his weapon away.
Oh my. So, how did this impact you spiritually, being in this different position?
Well, it's heart wrenching to hear have leaders not be willing to care for the total soldier, to have a lack of understanding that if they have a soldier who's not fully uh, present in their mind, in their heart, in their bodies, their mission, this critical mission that our country is entrusting us to, has the potential to fail very fast. And I think that a truly mission oriented leader will want to know that every soldier, every warrior on that battlefield is fully present. And it's reminiscent of the story of Gideon. It's a biblical principle where God shows him how to let these other ones go, that he could do more with a few and have the battle be a sure win than to take all these great numbers but have so many that were very distracted and their head and their hearts were not in the game, not in the battle.
So, it's heart wrenching. What did you do with that for yourself?
Well, fortunately, I had a very godly commander on the camp who managed all the affairs. He went on to do some greater things since then, and even though we weren't of the same faith, he understood that I was there to do a job, and so I would talk to him, the XO, and the sergeant major there, and when our weekly staff meetings, tell them what was going on, and uh, they they started getting involved when, and this is a huge blessing. It's great to have such responsive leaders, and I was able to tell some of situations like we had a first sergeant, and this was not unusual, unfortunately. Some of these situations, again, for a lot of leaders who've been part of units since World War II. They've been preparing and training, but had not been deployed since World War II. And this is why they called it the surge. It was the big call up. And I know one of the things that really activated my commander and the commander getting into action was learning of one group that was doing their PT, their morning PT on the backside of Camp Buring, and a number of soldiers had come to me scared to report, but they said, when we're doing PT, our first sergeant is walking on our stomachs. And I just thought of the potential injuries. And I thought that, like conditions. And if they're doing that just outside of Iraq, I can imagine why these young service members, men and women, are wondering, how will I ever survive combat? Who has my back? Who has my back when my first sergeant's walking on my stomach and making light of the fact this is how we do war. This is how we prepare war. We kind of beat each other up a little bit on the way.
What other ways could you support them before they went into battle?
I found that one of the most significant ways, and that I have found this the go-to till today, is when I would hear their story and we talk about some different approaches, different things that they need to do. And very often I found if they knew everything that they had come with um, in their mind and their heart, if they could make peace, literally make peace with God as much as possible, uh, between them and God, and sometimes them and their loved ones, then they could be ready to face any battle.
What difference does God make?
He makes all the difference because you can march into battle if you know you did everything that you could to take care of your family and your loved ones. Uh, You had time to get your heart right with God. You asked forgiveness of the people that maybe you wronged. You you saw that there might be a way to keep a promise if you were allowed to come back, and realize that there's a place where you could lay that in the hands of God and keep marching forward. And that's what I think we did the most when I say when a chaplain, when I would shut up after all that brainstorming, resourcing, and looking at some of the angles, and we would just pray, and we would see God show up in that room, and the peace that God has promised to his children. It's not something a chaplain can drum up. It's not something that anyone else can pull together. And you know it's from God because we're just not that good. That is uh, one of the most amazing moments a person, the one or two or three gathered in his name, can experience. And that makes all the difference.
Thank you, Chaplain Lisa. We'll continue this next time.
Thank you.